Hey there, Banditos. Welcome to the Wednesday episode of the Dollar Bin Bandits. I'm Mike Farah, and today we have writer Stephanie Williams on the show. Stephanie has the second issue of her first creator-owned book, Roots of Madness, on the stands today. The first issue came out in October. It is a very heady mix of alternate history and cosmic horror. I think you're going to love it. You may know Stephanie from some of her other books, though, for DC and Marvel, things like Nubia, things like Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, a little bit of My Little Pony, but now is really hitting it out of the park with Roots of Madness from Ignition Press. She also has Temporal coming up from Mad Cave. So she's on the rise, and we're happy to have her. This is Stephanie Williams. To welcome Stephanie Williams to the show. Stephanie, how are you?
I am doing well despite my background. It's just par for the course for the rest of the year.
We'll assume your real place where you're at is not on fire.
Well, that's debatable, but yes.
Maybe metaphorically.
Yes.
Um, so as always, we're gonna kick you off with our first question, which is, how did you first discover comics?
So the Dollar Tree, which I mean,
Sure.
I think they still you might be able to find some comics there, but when I was younger, it was my grandmother's favorite store, and I would always get toys. But finally I saw it was a Hagar the Horrible. There was like a collection. It was very actually it was pretty thick. It wasn't a compendium, but it was pretty thick for a Dollar Tree book. And I remember picking that up. I had to be all of maybe 6 or 7. I'm pretty sure the jokes went over my head, but that wasn't the point. The point was that the comic strips that I was used to seeing in the newspapers were in a book. And I think that was the moment where I was just like, oh, I think I like this. And then from there, the thrift store, another place where you can get comics, and also the grocery store were like my go-tos at the time for comics.
So immediately after picking up these stories, the collections of the newspaper strips,
Hmm.
you were stricken yourself, and you said,
Yeah.
how can I get my hands on more of these?
How can I get more? I am still like a very like I will stay up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning reading. Like I've always loved reading in that way. So, and it's probably because of my parents, because whenever I was interested in anything, they would go out and they would just get it. So yes, thanks to them. I think it might have been my dad or maybe even my grandfather who saw me like thumbing through the Hagar book, and was like, hey, there's more of this, but it looks different. And remember that guy with the bat ears that you were interested in? Like he's got a whole thing. So shout out to them for that, because they're definitely one of the biggest contributors to my reading habit.
Did you do you remember when you first set foot in a comic store and realized that there's like a whole bigger world
I
of this stuff?
did. Yeah, and unfortunately, that came much later in life. In fact, when I was in college, I was going to UIC, and yeah, so University of Illinois Chicago, jump skipping away from downtown, and there is a comic shop called Graham is it Graham Cracker Comics. And
Okay.
where is that on? It's like across from the park, but I remember walking in with a friend and was like, oh wait, I'm missing this the whole time. Because I'm pretty sure maybe there were comic shops like around where I was growing up, but it wasn't just, I don't know, that just wasn't somewhere that I went.
Yeah.
So that was the first time experiencing that. And actually, I'm happy that I got to chance to experience that in my college years, because I don't know, like I had a greater appreciation because I was like, I don't have to like kind of scrounge around to find these things. It's right here in my local comic shop.
Yep. I read that post University of Illinois
Mhm.
Chicago, you got into the field of scientific research
Yeah.
rather than, some of the guests we have who have, I guess, a very quick or direct entree into comics. Um, what exactly were you doing, and when, if it was a specific time, did you make the
Mhm.
decision to transition or start something new in the realm of comics?
Yeah, so I was an electron microscopist. It's so funny because at the time I didn't know what that was until I had a job interview for it. I had just graduated from school. Well, actually, the week or two before I graduated, I had a job interview at the local hospital out this way because they had a research department. And my mother misled me. She was like, "Yeah, Charlotte's got a big research scene." It is not. But I just so happened to luck up and get an interview at one of the sole research centers in the area. So it was the job for I think it was like immune biology or something like that. But I ended up not getting that because the job upstairs, the person had just quit. And so I went upstairs to interview for this job and I learned about like, what electron microscopy was and all this cool stuff. And I was like, oh, I really didn't think that this was like a thing. Like I just like you're taking pictures, you're working directly with the pathologist. You're just doing all this cool stuff. And it was a great job, like a skill set that I feel like if I were to sit in front of an ultra microtome or even like the microscope, like riding a bike, it would come back to me. So
Right.
I really enjoyed that work. I thought about going back to get my PhD MD, which would have been another, I don't know, 16 years more of school.
Yeah, you'd still
Thankfully
be
that did
doing
not, yeah,
it.
thankfully that didn't work out because the thing was is that that was something that I would have been doing because it felt like the next logical step. I really love science, but that wasn't necessarily where my heart truly was. It was where my heart was conditioned to be. And by that, I just mean like, I grew up in a household where, you go get a education and you do it to get a stable job. And nothing is more, well, depending on how you look at it, nothing is more stable than, the medical field, science. That's debatable these days, but
Yeah,
or maybe it's
unfortunately.
always been that way. So the transition to wanting to get back to I don't know, like writing and considering myself someone who is artistic came like right after I had my son. I don't know if it was the postpartum depression, just all the hormones or whatever, but something about that moment just made me say like, what am I doing? Like I love this job. I'm great at it, but what am I really doing? Am I going to feel fulfilled doing this 15 years from now? And the answer was no, but it was very scary to say no, and like accept that. So around that time, I was like really getting into Black romance novels. Just because I didn't know that there was just so much of it. And we're talking, historical Black romances, so on and so forth. And it was writing that I was like, okay, I feel seen. I love superhero comics, but a lot of times there is a lot to be left. There's a lot left to be desired when it comes to Black superheroines. And in these
Mhm.
stories, you have these women who are, heroic in their own right, but like they're deeply complicated, but they're still worthy of love, and you want to go on this journey with them. They're multifaceted. So there was an author that I reached out to named Maureen Smith, and I told her like, I'm thinking about I want to like get back to writing, but I'm not sure where to start. If you have any advice, I would greatly appreciate it. And she was kind enough to not only email me back, but like really take time to be encouraging. So much so that I went out and got a new laptop, which I needed. I hadn't had a new laptop since like my freshman year of college. And I started a blog. Like I went to WordPress, started a blog. I forgot what it was called, but it was just me talking about motherhood and like also the things that I really loved, which was superhero stuff, sci-fi, all of these things, and kind of talking about that from this new perspective that I had on life. So then that grew to me podcasting and then somehow building a following on Twitter, which was not necessarily my intent, but apparently people were interested in what I had to say about these things. So that kind of happened. And then from podcasting, to writing for places like Sci-Fi Wire and Nerdist, Den of Geek, places like that, where I'm always talking about characters and just doing these deep dives. And finally, I was like, well, I'm always writing about this thing that I love. Why don't I try actually writing, putting out the stories that I want to see.
Mhm.
And then Parenthood Activate came. I think I finally left my job in 2019. I remember sitting down writing that resignation letter. I think I put out like the third issue of Parenthood Activate with art by Sarah Macklin. And my other writing had been consistent enough where I was like, okay, it's all right. Like I'm still gonna get a side job, but like this, I can make this move. So ended up doing that. And then the side job that I got didn't work out. And my husband was pretty much like, okay, well, before you hop back into another 9 to 5, let's see what could happen if you're able to put 110% in this. Because Living Heroes had happened. The Kickstarter was successful. And I think it's my reward for that was a month later. An editor from Marvel reached out and was like, "Hey, do you want to do a story in this anthology, Marvel Voices Legacy?" And yeah, the rest is kind of like not history because it's still being made, but that is the transition. It was a I want to say 2015 to 2019, 2020. So it was a bit of a journey, but it was one that was well worth the travel.
There's a lot to unpack there. It's
Yes.
a fascinating story. First of all, how long were you at your full-time job
7
before?
years.
7 years. Wow,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good chunk of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, I'm glad you were able to sort of, develop this sort of side project, which became your main, passion
Yeah.
over time. But I'm interested in you said what really got you going in terms of storytelling was these Black romances, historical romances, which I'm assuming were they novels?
Hmm.
Okay. Was it always predetermined for you to sort of get your feet wet in comics, or was there a period there where you were thinking maybe I'll be a novel writer as either as well or instead of a
Yeah.
comics writer?
It's funny. No, if anything, very, very early on, I thought I would be like this poet. So like I've always
Okay.
been dabbling in different types of writing, and just storytelling in general. I think around that time, maybe it did cross my mind, like, yeah, I'll do novels, but there are other things that I like to do, like, I don't know, write a screenplay. I just knew that it was important for me to figure out how to hone my voice. And at that time, it felt like those authors, because I was reading so much of their work at that time, and still to this day, I could really get a feel for their voice. In comics, there were folks like Dwayne McDuffie, who else? Of course, Christopher Priest, Brian Michael Bendis, but a lot of them were men. Because like, yes, Gail Simone was around, Kelly Thompson. Well, no, not Kelly Thompson at the time when I was
Yeah.
growing up reading comics. Kelly Sue DeConnick a little bit and a little bit of G. Willow Wilson. But as far as Black women writing comics, no. So I don't think it really, or not in the I should say not in like a Marvel DC. A lot of Black women creators who I were familiar with were cartoonists. I couldn't draw, so like I just that was the disconnect there.
Mm.
So for me, I think it was because these were women that I could relate to and I could see myself. I think that is why that created such a spark in a way that I didn't have that connection, that this is something that I can do when it came to comics, if that makes sense. This has been something that I've been sharing a little bit more, because someone asked me, like, you always speak of Black romance authors being, the spark for you to write, but you're writing comics. I'm like, well, yeah, but I always loved comics and I wanted to do it. I just didn't know that I could.
Mm. Got it. Yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it doesn't just because, you're taking inspiration from one place doesn't mean
Mhm.
you have to use that inspiration to do more of that thing,
Yeah.
right? You can do something else with it. And especially, there's certainly in comics, like you were saying, there is definitely a space for the perspective you're bringing from that background
Mhm.
that didn't really exist.
Yeah.
So it's certainly filling a void, so to speak,
Yes. Yes.
which I
Yes.
think is great. So so you started with web comics, right?
Hmm.
And then you did a was the Kickstarter for a collection of one of your
No.
web comics, or was that an original or
Well,
separate idea, I guess?
separate idea. And it's funny because like to this, I was a nervous wreck. I was like, I hope people know that this is like a fan comic and so on and so forth, because it was this mix up of living single and my favorite Marvel characters and kind of putting them in this different setting that I hope felt relatable. And a lot of folks have told me that it did. And it
Yeah.
really resonated with them because again, like this was me making something that I wish that I could see, really more so speaking to some of those characters that I love, like a Storm, a Missy Knight, a Monica Rambeau, where I didn't really get a chance to see them interact with each other like that. Um, they were rarely on teams together. I think at the time, Coates, what was it? Black Panther and the Crew was the most I'd ever seen Storm and
Yeah.
Misty Knight interact. And then that got canceled. So I really just wanted I think of like Marvel Divas, but it was just Monica Rambeau there. Like I wanted to see these Black women interact with one another outside of whatever they're doing on a superhero level and just, dig into their personalities and what they look like and what they act like outside of saving the day. So yeah, like that, I think that was the moment for me where because it was so successful, I was like, okay, obviously my voice is needed in some kind of way. At least I hope that it is. And I have a unique enough perspective that I can, do what I would like to do, which is create these stories that not only I want to see, but others would like to see too.
Great. And Marvel Voices was, as you said, your sort of break-in work.
Hmm.
Now that you were, again, this was sort of a first assignment, but now that you were in sort of the major leagues, was there, did you feel completely confident and ready to go, or were you like, a little bit of imposter syndrome, like, am I doing this right? What am I doing? How did
Most
that feel?
definitely imposter syndrome. The other thing too is that I knew that I was going to have to work even harder, which I was prepared to do. Because I had seen in the past that, folks get a shot at an anthology, but that does not mean, well, now you're going to get, an ongoing series and like all of these doors are going to open. Like, no, you have to still put in the work and try to ride that momentum. It just so happened for me that the stars aligned and Vita Ayala suggested me to an editor at DC. So when Marvel Voices came out, yes, it came out that week, and I spoke to the editor at DC, and I think I had the most whiplash of imposter syndrome that week because I was like, oh my God, first writing credit, first professional writing credit, and now I'm talking to an editor at DC. And at the time, I thought it was for like another anthology, which was great because I was like, whatever, I'm going to build my resume however I need to. And then I found out that I was going to be working on Nubia, and I think that just that was terrifying. It just was because Nubia is a character who existed for so long but didn't have a lot of history and comics to show for it. So you kind of have like this new character but old character, and what a tall task for one of your first major comic gigs to bring a character back to relevancy. Because the other part to that too is that I was scared that after Nubia came out, that well, the only time that I was going to get called up was either for additional Black History Month stuff or if another Black woman character needed to be revamped, which I was still going to do it anyway. But also,
Yeah.
there were other stories that I wanted to tell and be able to tell because, let's be very frank and honest. It's not like a lot of these Black women characters or Black characters in general are getting enough series or books to be something that is sustainable for somebody to make a living off of.
Mm.
That was also important, that, I was seen as a writer who just so happens to be a Black woman on top of that. So I talked to Christopher Priest about that because I felt guilty in feeling that way. But no, it's true. Sometimes that extra identifier, or two extra identifiers, whatever those are unfortunately sometimes used against you in a way that you don't expect. And doesn't necessarily make it fair or anything, but it's just, I can do I can do it all, and
Yeah.
I would like to do
Right.
it all.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked to Priest semi recently,
Uh-huh.
when the latest story in Vampirella came out.
Mhm.
And I sort of brought up the same kind of theme, or maybe he even brought it up. And he's like, I can do anything. And
Mhm.
because I said, this seems like a little bit outside, your wheelhouse here and there. But I'm like, you're much like an actor,
Yeah.
right? The writer of these stories can inhabit different characters that you have no experience. Like you're not a sexy female vampire who happens to now be dealing with their son or whatever. But you're obviously, knocking it out of the park. So
Yes.
I feel like people should know that.
You would
That
think,
you would
Mike,
think, but
but yeah.
I guess it's easy, not easier. It's more convenient to unfortunately paint people into corners,
Yes. Yes.
rather than give them the space and diversity of characters and experiences that they can well tackle. You
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
Okay, so that all being said, I did want to talk a little bit about Nubia because you did spend a little bit,
Yes.
a good decent amount of your career thus far with that character. So, how much did you know going in about Nubia, and what did you have kind of a plan for
Mhm.
how to, like you said, either bring her back to relevance or almost redefine her? Because I guess the good part, the advantage might be that she, not to use this sort of Wonder Woman metaphor, but she is more of a lump of clay. I mean, she existed, she's had some
Mhm.
history, but not as well defined. So that is actually a better position probably for a
Yes.
writer to come in with.
Yeah, so I knew way too much about Nubia. She happened to be one of the characters that we covered on the podcast, Misty Knight's Uninformed Afro. And that episode I remember clearly because I was struggling to find things to talk about. Because that history was so scarce and also kind of convoluted because you have Nubia with the apostrophe. Some folks I think it's Earth 23. I could be wrong, but there's another character, a Black woman, who is dressed as Wonder Woman, but that is not Nubia, it's someone else. So she appears, briefly in Wonder Woman Year One, and then, random things here and there, but nothing to really say who this character is, still very undefined. So coming into that, I thankfully already knew that, but her origin story, the original one, like as problematic as it is and so on and so forth, there were bits and pieces there that I absolutely wanted to build on, which was this woman who embodied confidence and, to me, who the Amazons are, in the same way that when you see Diana, you know who the Amazons are. So I started my research with George Perez's run of Wonder Woman, then worked my way up because I'm somebody who's I don't mind reading comics. I will read them all. So I don't mind going back and reading hundreds of comics. Like, I'm having a great time. So I did that. Also read Madeline Miller's Circe, which I'm so happy that I did that. And that's a novel, because that informed a lot, because I knew that this story was going to take place predominantly on the mascara. We're mainly dealing with, women characters. So, like, what does that look like? And how do you make that engaging for everybody? And I felt like Madeline Miller Cersei was definitely that. I think I randomly watched 300. Nothing from it came to Nubia, but um I just
You
like
weren't
was just
inspired
trying
by the
to
abs?
maybe, yes, just a little bit. Hercules, all of these things, I just kind of like immersed myself into all the Greek mythology of it all. And the plan was that we knew that the origin story was going to have to change. And I was like, okay, well, that's great because I'll just, go to the George Perez playbook and pull out the Cavern of Souls. And we ended up making the Well of Souls. And thankfully, Jordi Belair was already doing that with young Diana. So I was like, shout out to you. You just make that way easier. I don't have to like make an argument for this. And then also like I felt like that was a great way to still connect her to Diana by having her come out the same day that Diana was born. But the scene where she is still born in Amazon, she's just reborn as one. So that, and then the fact that she was going to be queen, I thought that that was great. That was a great definer. So the thing was, you don't really know this character. Also, you kind of really don't know the Amazons like that. Not the ones that are on Themyscira because Diana's not there all the time. And now the more difficult task is not only reintroducing and defining Nubia, but also the Amazon so that you care about the women that she is going to be queen over. So there were two things that kind of had to happen. And once we were able to solidify that, it was just kind of so much writing. So much. That first draft I turned in, I think I went back recently to look at it and it was awful. But it's one that I return to whenever I do get imposter syndrome because I can see all the growth from me then to now as a writer and everything else. And I think that has been, I don't know, like that's been the most exciting part to be able to track my growth in that way. But yeah, like Nubia and I felt had a connection because she was going from being Guardians of Doom's doorway, and I was going from, this life of, scientific research and everything else, and like going full force into the creative writing thing, and both of us trying to prove ourselves.
Uh, it was yeah, I mean, it was a great it wasn't your first effort, but I mean, it was sort of like,
Yes.
here I am,
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie Williams has arrived. And I think you certainly hit the target in
Thank
terms
you.
of what you wanted to do with that character and redefining and reintroducing them as sort of a powerhouse within the DC universe, or a significant part, rather than a side character, which
Yeah.
probably would be how she would be described before.
Yes. Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, and I could probably get a million more questions on Nubia herself, but you've done obviously other work, and you've not been, I don't think, sort of painted into a corner. You've done,
No.
I think, a diversity of work, and I wanted to ask about specifically changing gears, because there
Mhm.
are two things I noticed on your resume that are more kind of all ages, right? So you did
Mhm.
Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur and My Little Pony. Um, how difficult is it, if it is difficult, to kind of change gears from the more heady, dramatic, either superhero stuff like Nubia or Wakanda, and go into maybe something a little bit more lighthearted and fun, if you will?
Yeah. So surprisingly not that difficult. And I'm gonna hang that on the fact that I am a Gemini. And of all the negative things that people say about us, I will say that that has been my greatest strength to kind of meet things where I need to and go from there. I'm a storyteller first, and not to sound all pretentious, but I often like to let the story take me where it needs to go. And because, I mean, like, of course I'm writing it and so on and so forth, but like as you start writing, and things start to really take shape, you can see it a little bit differently than you did going in and make adjustments and so on or whatever you need to make the story the best that it needs to be. And for me, like because I come in with that in mind, that I'm not gonna try to like force something to be whatever it's not, or to have, a million opinions of what should happen and so on and so forth. It allows me to shift gears quite easily. I really enjoy it because I don't know, some days, high energy. So the kids stuff, all ages stuff is great. Other days, kind of moody. So, the stuff that's a little bit serious, it requires a little bit more. I'm able to bring that out. And then sometimes there are days where I'm just like, whatever. And it can go either way. And the happy fun thing is what lifts my mood, or even writing the darker whatever thing also kind of lifts my mood because I was like, oh, well, I've discovered something new about myself and where I'm able to go. So I'm growing in that way, but I love it. I really honestly do. It's nice to be able to take something that I've learned in writing something that's more serious and apply it in a way that fits the tone of an all ages book, and then vice versa.
And in terms of process, because
Mhm.
again, you're working with different artists on all of these different projects, and but you're still the sole writer. Do you have a way of communicating or a way of collaborating with these artists in terms of, how you deal out stories or how you talk about where things are going to go and what the visuals might look like?
Yeah, so I try to, and I've been told this recently, that my scripts are easily readable and digestible because they still leave space for you to fill in the gaps.
Hmm.
And I know for artists that is very important because again, this is a collaborate, like comics is a collaborative thing. So for me, unless something absolutely needs to be in the panel, like someone wearing, an ACDC shirt or whatever, if I don't like need it for the storytelling, then I want to inspire whatever it is that the what I have written down for the panel. Like I hope that it inspires the artist to infuse their self into this, because this is very much theirs as it is mine. And if there's artists that I've worked with before in the past and I just kind of really get to know them, then I find out, what it is that they really like and try to lean into those things, however I can that best fits the story. But yeah, like I try to make it even for the editor too, right? I don't want them reading something and nodding off and falling asleep because this is like the seventh script that they've read. And like there's just a lot of text and a lot of over direction and so on and so forth. So I almost try to write it prose, but not really because, stagnant action is happening in these panels. But that's the way that I try to engage with those that I'm working with, so that they have room to breathe and like bring their artistic talents to the whole book.
It's a great segue. That sounds like a, very happy, collaborative way to work with the artists, and I'm sure they appreciate, that a little bit of open space. I feel like when I hear from artists, um, they're if they do have a complaint, and they never name the person, but it's with, I think, overly directive scripts where, they don't have, they have such tight boundaries to
Yeah.
draw within because, obviously they're a part of the storytelling.
Mhm.
They're not just sort of an executor. They're, a storytelling companion with the
Yes,
writer.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so maybe that's a good segue because we can talk about the collaboration, but on your new project, which is Roots of Madness,
Mhm.
which is, I guess in a mainstream way, your first creator-owned comic. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
So, how does that feel to have more complete control over your characters, the story, how things develop? What's that like?
It is both terrifying and so satisfying. It is, I don't know, like it just feels so fulfilling. I know before well, chip is still on my shoulder, but because I came in with a lot of my pro work being just mainly, other people's sandboxes, so on and so forth. And then like this thing like, hey, like I can do this, but also um I can tell my own stories too. But at the time, like I just did not feel ready. And also there wasn't a personal original story that I felt just such a driving need to tell to come out of the gate with. So it's funny, Mad Cave Studios reached out to me first, and Temporal technically is my first creator owned. It's just that they happen to be coming out at the same time. So
Okay.
happy that that happened because that's when I learned that, like, well, not only have you given yourself permission to go ahead and, let the creativity just run free, but again, you are definitely doing what it is that you set out to do, which is to put out into the world the things that you want to see. And both Temporal and Roots of Madness are most definitely that, because I get to tell these stories that are just so much me, which makes it terrifying again, because I can't blame it on, 80 years of lore and trying to figure it out. These are fresh things that have come from me. So the only person to blame would be me at the very end of the day. But I don't know, also at the same time to again have a story that you feel so compelled to put out into the world is just something that I am grateful to have the opportunity to do.
What made this the right time now that I'm putting the pieces together that you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
both coming out at the same time to bring forth these stories that are all your own after again a good amount of time, like you said,
Mhm.
playing in others' sandboxes.
I think one, more sure of myself as a writer, and more sure of myself as a person. I think that is the bigger thing too. Also, everything that I've learned up until this point, I can execute it and put it to practice in a way that I, either wasn't able to do, or there was limitations in doing so in the other work. I don't know, like all of that just felt like, okay, now's the right, there's never a right time, but I felt compelled enough that I would not talk myself out of it. Because I'm pretty sure, like very early on, I was like, oh yeah, like I could do an original. And I think back to maybe 4 years ago. No, no, I could have not. Well, no, I could have, but I would have been doing myself, the artist, the story, all of that a disservice, because there were just certain things that I needed to learn and also to grow as a creative, as a writer in the space. Me personally, that I'm just happy that it happened when it did.
I can imagine, and it's a good time. It's a good
Mhm.
time to be out there with I think your own stuff because it's just a almost like a creative renaissance. I feel like in
Yeah.
comics because there's just so much out there and in so many different genres and so many different voices. It's just wonderful to see. Um, so, how was this a story that I don't know if you like some writers where you have kind of these notebooks of kernels of ideas and every once in a while it sort of presents itself as like, oh, I'm going to get back to this and like develop it,
Mhm.
or if this was more just something that was more recent that just kind of struck you and decided wanted to sort of write something in this vein. It one or the other? Did you have it wasn't sort of, I always use this phrase, in your back pocket, or was it something
So
that you had an epiphany on, maybe that you were like, I want to write this now?
it's funny because I do have that notebook, or notes app, I should say, of like all of these things. But no, this was a story that just was an epiphany, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. It came out of a conversation with a friend of mine. We were randomly talking about Madam CJ Walker. I don't know why. I don't know. We had just, one of us had either just watched Drunk History, which I missed that show. I thought it was like so
Yeah.
fun.
Agreed.
or what it was, but we were on the topic of her, and I was just kind of talking like, one thing about Madam CJ Walker, I always thought like it would have been so cool if she also would have been like this revered chemist, as well as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And then it got me to thinking. I was like, well, what if there was a character that was that, right? And then what if we do mix in some cosmic horror, and even though Lovecraft is so racist, we still go and we explore that type of Lovecraftian story, or storytelling, but from a Black perspective, and like what that looks like. And the thing that really brought it on home for me after that conversation, I had just started Beverly Jenkins. She's a Black romance author, but she's most known for historical fiction. And it was a contemporary book of hers that I was reading called The Edge of Dawn. And in the book, the main character, her father is killed or dies, but she believes that he's been murdered, and he has. And she kind of goes on this journey of like puzzle pieces. And he just so happened to leave her this quilt, that would be, if anybody else saw it, would be referred to as a slave quilt. And in that story, the character remembers, like, going to the museum and like seeing the exhibit on it, and just bring all of this historical knowledge into the story in a way that just felt so seamless. And I was like, oh wait, so yeah, I would love to do something like this. Because before I said I would never write a period a period piece or anything set at the turn of the century or anywhere past 1980, but something about reading that, and just really being inspired by it said, no, I know what I want to do. So that conversation we had, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna tell this story that features this young Black woman at the turn of the century, trying to do something to help our community, at a time where people are putting lard and lye in their hair to straighten it, and just how horrific that is in itself. So that is a jumping off point. And on the surface, yes, it's a story about hair, but it is just so much. It ended up being so much more than that, thanks to the whole cosmic horror of it all. And again, me having a character that kind of is this reflection of me, because again, like, this is my science background, but in the inverse now is me being this comic writer, and just creative in general, and like there's no one in my family that can really speak to that. So I'm using all of these tools of just life lessons, survival, and so on and so forth, and things that I've learned in past jobs, and taking that and applying it in a space that no one who taught that to me has ever been. So like, what does that look like, and what is that outcome? And even though our intentions are good, that does not mean that the outcome will be, or the type of impact that we have on others might not be exactly, I don't know, what we thought it would be.
Very excited to read it, based on this description and how you're developing it. I really, it's very intriguing.
Thank you.
Um, how did you hook up with the artist who, I hope I don't butcher the name, Letizia Cadonici,
Mhm.
and the publisher Ignition Press, who is kind of a nascent up and comer
Yeah.
in the scene?
So, I don't know, this is 6 degrees of separation, but the week that I joined on to like start on Nubia, Jamie Rich was still at DC, but then left. So
Right.
we barely had any interaction. And then we kind of circled each other, either a project for this, it fell through, or timing wasn't right. So last year I went to this comic con that is amazing. It's in Boise, Idaho, but also it's in Boise, Idaho. And I remember folks saying, like, well, what the hell are you going to do in Boise, Idaho? I'm like, well, I'm going to have a great time, but also I'm going to do this comic convention. And Jamie was going to be there. And he reached out. He was like, I see you're going to BCAV. I'm going to be there too. would you like to meet to just, like, what are you interested in doing? I had no idea that Ignition Press was something that he was doing. I just know that he knew that he had just recently left IDW, and I was like, well, it had to have been for something big. And sure enough, that's when he told me about Ignition Press and like what they were looking for and like what they were trying to do for creatives and so on and so forth. And the thing that I pitched him was not Roots of Madness. It was a totally different story that I'm pretty sure I will still do. But Roots just had such, I don't know, like you could just feel the impact because they were good with that, and I was excited, and I was going to do the other story. But right before going to Baltimore Comic-Con, Jamie told me that Philip was going to be there. That's Philip Sabick, was going to be there, and he wanted to talk to me about the original that I pitched. And like literally that week before I left for Baltimore Comic-Con, that's when I decided, like, no, Roots is actually the thing that I want to do. So I briefly told Jamie about it. He was like, that sounds amazing. Talk to Philip. And then I told Philip about it and so on and so forth. Because I was like, I know we're supposed to talk about this one thing, but I want to tell you about this other story that just kind of came to me. And like by the time I finished, he was like, yeah, you need to do that one. And I was like, I'm so happy you feel that way because that's the one that is burning me up inside to like get out. I've never written something so quickly.
Wow. That's again, great to hear. And yeah, I think and it's become cliche at this point on our show that I always say it comes through on the page when that the passion is burning that deep. So again, excited to see it. So I think the issue one,
Mhm.
how many issues is it, I assume, going to be a limited series, or is
Limited series is 6. The way that it ends, could be more to come out of it.
okay.
Because I'm like, as much as I'm, doing it's a character driven story, like I am creating this world where all these other possibilities could happen. So it's definitely limited at the time, but very excited that I don't know, like I've created something that could be like a world that I return back to.
Is there anything else, without spoiling anything and
Mm-hmm.
just being intriguing rather than over explaining, that you would want to tell audiences who are looking at yours and again sometimes overwhelming wall of choices,
Yeah.
what is Roots of Madness is going to offer?
It is going to offer a story that is deeply human and relatable. I think that is the common denominator for anything that I write. Is that I'm going to make it relatable. Whether it's sharks with abs or it's a young black woman on her way to Savannah, Georgia in 1905, like I'm going to make it deeply human and something that hopefully resonates with you in some kind of way. Letitia's art is phenomenal. I have a great and deep admiration for artists who really focus on kind of like horror and like these kind of off-putting types of stories, because those stories only work because their storytelling is just so well suited for that genre. And just to see her bring the story to life and make it so that like when you're reading this, I don't know, maybe you are looking over your shoulder, are you, maybe you are unsettled. That makes me excited, and if that's your thing, I hope it makes you excited too. But yeah, like between that and also just the colors, the vibrancy that Alessandro gives, this is a story that everybody from publisher all the way down to letterer has been excited to tell. So with that in mind, just know that like we know that you're spending your hard-earned money to give us your attention, right? So we're making sure that you're walking away with something that, I don't know, like you feel full after you and even though it's a horror, like you still feel some kind of comfort to come out of that. Because I have comfort horrors, and there are people that do too. But you're getting your I don't know, like you feel like your time was well spent.
And looking to it. I like that metaphor of feeling full after having consumed the story.
Yeah.
So that's where. So this is horror, right?
Mhm.
You've done superhero, you've done sort of action adventure, you've done all ages. I'm sure I'm not gonna get to all of them. Are there other genres or characters that you are aching to sort of sink your teeth into?
Yes. But that is as much as I'll say. I don't want to spoil anything. Yes, yes, yes. In fact, I just really pitched Twigman that I believe is Green Light. I'm a huge fan of like late 80s, early 90s action sci-fi. So
Hmm.
this thing that I pitched is like very much there. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, like I like I don't know, like I'm really looking forward to showing more of like my personal interests and the things that I really love that maybe folks weren't expecting of me, or just don't know because like, I share stuff online, but I don't share everything online. So it's nice to be able to kind of share more of myself, but through my art.
Yeah, it sounds like you're sort of omnivorous in terms
Oh
of like
yes.
what you like and what you want to kind of put out into the world, which I enjoy too. I'm very much like that as well. Um, uh, so are you gonna are you gonna stay in sort of the creator-owned realm for a while, or are you looking for kind of a balance going forward of some creator-owned, some, guess mainstreamed or licensed characters? What's your plan?
That is excellent question. Right now I'm doing a balance, just to see how that feels, and so far, great. It's nice to a one for you, one for me type of thing, which
Mhm.
I think is really great. But really 5-year plan on out, like animation, of course, is my next love to comics. So it's an easy bridge. So I would love to find myself in an opportunity to either contribute to an animated show or even collaborate with someone to make a new one. That is something, and it can be all ages, but I would definitely prefer it to be something that you would see on Adult Swim.
Nice. Intriguing,
Yes.
as always. So you mentioned also Temporal, I think,
Hmm.
from Mad Cave.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything, I mean, you sort of made reference to a lot of things that are percolating, but anything else sort of solid that we can look forward to in the coming, I guess, months?
Um,
It's fine if those are
no.
the only two, because that's a lot.
No, actually, yeah, there is something in the coming months from IDW that I would love to mention, but I can't. But it's really fun. It's a one-shot situation. The announcement for that will be sometime in December. And
Okay.
then just to be the queen of teas, if you look out for DC solicits in October, um, I am working on something that I'm just still like, wow. So very much so looking for that to be out. But for now, yes, Street Sharks, Temporal, and Roots of Madness.
And we're back. As I said, Stephanie is really kind of hitting her stride. She is not a newbie anymore, but she is not have like years and years under her belt. I think she's just kind of really expressing a lot of ideas and bringing a lot to the table in the comics format. Very excited to talk to her. So thank you, Stephanie, for being on the show. Thank you all out there for listening, for viewing, for rating, reviewing, subscribing, going to Patreon, looking up Dollar Bin Boosters, throwing us a few bucks, get some early uncut episodes. It all helps this train just keep on moving. But that'll do it for today's episode. We got another one this week, so we'll see you then.